Hey guys, this is Django. I'm going to be talking about how to start fires at your campsite. This is something that actually takes a good amount of practice to be able to consistently light a fire despite what the conditions may be. I see a lot of leaders sometimes like just dousing their wood with like lighter fluid, but no, you don't need to do that if you know what you're doing. Lighter fluid is for amateurs. So really you just need to learn the basic skills of fire starting and you should be able to light a fire all the time. So if you see here, I've got my materials all ready to go. This is a good idea to get all of your materials all gathered up before you start. That way once you actually start the fire, everything that you need is right there and you don't have to go running around and looking for it. So to kind of go through what I've got, over here I've got torn up some paper, various pieces of cardboard, and then I've got a few bigger pieces that I might need later. I've got some small sticks and twigs right here, slightly bigger ones, and then some shorter, fatter ones. Pine cones are just for fun, really. And then I've got my big logs over here. So the things that you always want to keep in mind, there's two kind of basic rules to fire starting. Number one, you want to build your fire from small to large. So the smallest things are going to catch easier than the bigger things. And you also always want to keep in mind that fire burns up. So you want to start from the bottom and build up because the flames are going to move upwards. There's about 3 different techniques that people use in terms of like their fire starting structure. So I'm going to go through what those 3 different ones are. No matter which one you use though, you always want to start with your stuff that's going to catch fire easiest. So for example, paper is going to catch easier than cardboard. So I'll take my torn up piece of paper and I'm going to put those kind of on the bottom. Also, if you find kind of like really fine like pieces of bark, kind of like feathery stuff, like this, that will also catch very easily. So you can put that on the bottom as well. You can kind of use that to build it up. So we're kind of making a little bit of a pile, trying to keep it loose because you do want to have airflow because oxygen is going to be what helps your fire to burn. So this little stuff that you start with, this is what you call tinder. So I'm going to add some cardboard on the top of that, just making a loose pile. I always keep a bag in my trailer where we collect just any spare paper or cardboard or Rice Krispie boxes that you're always going to end up with. So that way I always have cardboard on hand. You just want to make sure that you're keeping it dry. As well as your wood, you always want to make sure that you're keeping your wood dry, because that's going to be one of your biggest things that's going to mess you up when you're trying to start a fire. If everything's wet, then you're going to have a really hard time. Alright, so in terms of like how you structure your fire around your tinder that you've put in, the 3 methods that people usually use are the Teepee Method, the log cabin method, and the Leanto Method. So I'll show you what those are right now. Alright, so if you look here, this is what we would call the log cabin method. So we've got all of our tinder on the inside, and then I've kind of built up around it using some sticks and twigs with some pretty small ones on the top. So that way when I light it underneath, it'll burn up and it'll catch these small sticks and twigs. As you start to build it bigger, then you would take your pieces of wood and kind of continue this pattern of kind of putting your wood on the outside and then kind of laying over the top like this if you were to light it from there. But we're not to that stage yet. Right, so this is an example of the Teepee Method. Pretty much you're just kind of finding sticks and starting to lean them up against each other so that you get a solid base where you can then lean more little sticks and twigs up against it and you've got all your tinder in the middle. The hard thing about this is that it can be a little bit difficult to kind of get the sticks to lean against each other to start it out, but once you get it, then it should stay. You also want to make sure that you don't have too much space in between your tinder and your sticks. If you've got like this much space, even though fire burns up, it's not going to burn all the way up to catch the sticks that are way up there. And then once you get to the stage where you're going to build bigger than this, you can either continue with the Teepee method and taking bigger sticks and logs and start leaning them up. Once again, this can be a little bit precarious to get them to stay just how you want them to. But if you do get it to start to stay, the one good thing about a Teepee method is that it probably gives off the most heat because of the way that the fire will burn out from it. Or if you're going to start it with a Teepee method, you could then move into kind of a log cabin method, where then you kind of place your logs around it and then build from there. The log cabin is definitely the sturdiest for building up. If you think about it, you know, log cabins are pretty sturdy. Alright, so lastly here we have what I call the lean-to method. This is actually my go-to favorite method that I like to use. So basically I take a big log and I use that as a base to then lean my smaller sticks and twigs up against, and then I've got my tinder underneath. The other thing that I like about this method is that while you're starting to get some of these small sticks and twigs to light, you're actually starting to even work on getting this bigger log to light as well. So that can help you in your, as you're building the fire bigger. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and light the fire. I've just got my little matches here. So we're going to try to do this with one match. If you've done it right, one match is all you need. And yeah, I've got all of my extra materials here ready to go when I need them. So I'm going to come over here and remember, fire burns up, so I want to light from the bottom. And if you're going to light with a match, you want to make sure that you're lighting that match down close to the fire, because if it's windy and you're lighting it up here, by the time you get it down, your match is probably going to go out. So I've got my matches down here very close. And get it right in on that paper. As you can see, that paper is going to light right away.
That's some nice paper.
Okay, now at this point, this is when I need to actively keep working with the fire. If I just let it sit there, then it's apt to just go out. So I want to make sure that I'm feeding it. I'm paying attention to where it's lighting and feeding it in those places, because I don't want it to run out of fuel now that we've got it going a little bit. So I'm going to keep using some of my pieces of paper and cardboard and kind of shoving them in right where those flames are, because those are going to catch easy until we get some of these sticks burning more. Don't be afraid to get your hands relatively close to the fire. If you're back here like this because you're scared of it, then you're probably not going to be very successful. Alright, so now we're really getting some of these twigs are starting to burn. So I'm going to grab a few of my larger ones. I'm going to put another stick here and kind of start laying across the top so that those can now start to catch. If you've got really skinny pieces of wood like this in your package of wood that you bought, those are good ones to put on at this stage. And then I'm still going to make sure that I'm feeding the middle, because your fire will do what's called hollow out, because all that tinder and your small sticks and twigs are going to burn up relatively quickly, and they could burn up before your big logs really catch. And if they do that, then your fire hollows out and you've lost it. You want to really build up those coals. So I'm kind of just strategically placing some smaller stuff right into the flames so that it can catch. You always want to make sure that there's airflow, because if you build up too much around your fire right now, then you'll suffocate it. This is also where, if you've got a lot of like thicker but kind of short sticks that aren't really good for building or laying on things, once you get a little bit of a fire going, these are good for kind of dropping in the center to help build up the coals. A couple of things that maybe you run into when you're out on the road. As you know, in some campgrounds that we camp in a lot, sometimes the ground is totally scoured and you can't find a single stick or twig. Or if you're out in the desert, you can't find a single stick or twig anywhere. So what you want to do in that case, obviously have your paper, have your cardboard, and then I always look at my pieces of wood and see if there's kind of small pieces that I can break off, like on this one. That didn't break off very long, but you can kind of break off these smaller pieces. Also, if you have a hatchet, then you can take the wood that you already have and kind of chop off some small pieces from it. So at this point, our fire is pretty stable. So if I wanted, you know, make a big fire for these cold Grand Canyon nights, then I can start to add some more logs on the top. So yeah, that's pretty much it. As your fire keeps burning, always watch to see if it's hollowing out. If you look in the middle and it seems like there's nothing in there, you need to find some smaller sticks and twigs and shove those in, because that'll get your flame going really quick. Another trick you can do is, like with this log for example, once it's burned quite a bit and it's starting to kind of burn less, I can actually flip it over and then that will burn more. We might actually do that later. Some other things to keep in mind. Obviously, when you're staying in national parks, you want to, or really anywhere, you want to make sure that your fire is totally out before you go to bed. So I usually kind of take a spare piece of wood or something and spread it out, and then I dump water on it, because only you can prevent forest fires. Alright, you can